Hi, friends. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. As I'm recording this, it's the day after Christmas, and my wife and I have just completed our annual planning ritual. Some of you joined us in a live workshop we ran a couple of weeks ago doing annual planning, and others of you are in our Christian Coaches Academy where we get together and run through a process similar to this once a quarter collectively. But for some of you, you've never heard our annual planning process. And I want to go through this with you because I think it's a valuable process for all people. You don't need to be a coach to use this. I actually go through this process with my wife. We included my kids today for the first time. This is just the process that we go to around our life. And business becomes a part of that planning process, but only a part of it, along with considering my family goals, along with considering my faith goals, along with considering my health or fitness goals, my finance goals, my growth and personal development goals. All of these things can be considered in an ideal annual planning process. And so for us, it's a 7-step process. And here's what it includes. The first step is to reflect on the wins, the great moments, the celebrations of the year that was. And so every December, we'll look back at the entire year and say, what were our best moments? What were the most fun things that we did this year? What were the greatest celebrations of the previous year? And we really enjoy remembering the fun trips we took, remembering the great dates or the new restaurants we tried, or the sporting events that we went to, or the successes that we had in business or professionally. We love talking about the progress our kids made and all of the good things in life, the progresses that we've made in our relationship, the daring, bold choices that we made in our lives, the way that we challenged ourselves and answered the call. And there's nothing too little to be included in this. If there's anything that just makes you feel good in remembering the year, I want you to speak it out loud. If you'd prefer, you can write it or you can do both. But write, speak, or write and speak the celebrations of the year. It's so important for us to celebrate along the journey and recognize the progress as we're making it. So then the second step after we've done that is to reflect on the biggest challenges of the year. And from these biggest challenges, the adversities of the year, what were the lessons that we learned? Even now, as you're listening to this podcast, you could pause, you could go through this process right now, or you can take notes on the process and go through it later. But that second question is, what are the biggest challenges, the biggest adversities that we faced? And what are the lessons that we learned that we're going to take forward? How can those challenges, how can those adversities turn into blessings? How can there be a gift that we find in the challenge because God's refining something in us? He's helping us develop some part of our character. He's teaching us a lesson that we can use later. And so we'll reflect on those things and say, how can we get better? For me, I remember a challenge that I experienced in January in our business. That was painful at the time, caused me to make decisions that were really difficult at the time that I did not want to make. But now looking back, I can see all of the gifts that came from that situation and how it challenged me to be a better leader, how it challenged me to grow a smarter business, how it helped me attract some of the right people to our team, and it really called me into action in a new way and ownership in a new way for our business, which helped us have a really nice growth year in 2023. What are the lessons that you've learned this year? The third step in the process moves from reflection now into looking forward. And ultimately, for us, it's defining our values for the upcoming year. And for Kara and I, we've been doing this for several years now. We've had 8 years of annual planning. And so we're pretty decided on our values now. But the first several years, they changed each year. We were helping to get to know ourselves and establish our family's values and who we were going to be as the Janowskis. And that process took a while for us to get to a place of feeling like, okay, this is it. It doesn't mean that we're never going to change it again. We're going to review it each year. We're going to go over the values. We're going to remind ourselves of who we are and those anchors. And we might recognize at some point, I'm sure we will, when there needs to be an up-leveling, a changing, an reordering of the priorities. But for the first few years, it was kind of like a fresh list each year. as we were finding ourselves. You could do this by yourself. You could do this as a family. You could do this as a business or a team. But for us, we make a big overarching list of all the values that we want to drive our behaviors, our thoughts, our patterns, the way that we show up. What's it mean to be a Janowski? What's it mean to work for Faith2Influence? What's it mean to be Justin Janowski if I'm just doing this by myself? Let's have our name mean something. And so we'd make a big overarching list of all the values, all the ideas, like honesty is the best policy, love your neighbor, love God. Our rules of engagement behind me in my office have a lot of great values on them. Lead with love, be curious first, critical second, be a learner, not a knower. Remember that God is always fathering you. Practice full presence listening. Your values could be single words like generosity, or phrases like self-care or leadership. I mean, there's so many different things, of course, that you can consider here. What are your values? We would make this big list, and then we would narrow the list by crossing things off that didn't just didn't resonate at the same level as some of the other ideas. And we'd narrow down to the smallest list, might be 5, 7, 10 values, and then we'd rank them 1 through 10. And if you have multiple people doing the rankings, then you can assign points based on the rankings. So whatever I thought was the number one most important got 10 points. Whatever Kara thought was number one most important got 10 points. Number 2 got 9 points. Number 3 got 8. Number 4 got 7, all the way down to the 10th most important value we each ranked, getting 1 point. And then we could collectively see, when we added the points together, what our prioritization of values are. So we're able to have a board in our kitchen with our 10 most important values so that we can see them all the time. We can be reminded of them all the time. And then the fourth step in the process, once our values are established, is to consider what is a theme that we're going to move into the new year with. It might be a word or a phrase. It can be a rallying cry. What is this year about for our family? We've had a year of radical giving. We've had a breakthrough year. We've had a year of energy optimization. We had a health-focused year. We've had so many different things that have really called us into focus on important areas of our life, whatever it felt like was calling to us for that year. This upcoming year for us, 2024, is going to be the year of sustainable growth. Sustainable growth. We're really committed to growing professionally. We're really committed to growing in our health, in our finances, as parents, in our marriage. The key here, though, for us is sustainable growth. I don't want to just have an explosive year in business and then feel like I have to start over again in 2025. I don't want to do some kind of fad diet for 2 months or 3 months and get great results and then return to an old way of being. I want to make small micro changes. I want to turn the dial. I want to get better in such a way that we can sustain the progress. We can put foundations in place to make it easier for us to continue to grow year after year after year in these different ways and maintain the success and the progress that we find in 2024. Sustainable growth. That speaks to us this year. So we just kind of bounce ideas back and forth until we find it. What's your theme for the coming year? After your theme, we now can move into goal setting. And goal setting is number 5. This is where we make a list of the most important goals that we each have individually for the year. You might have some collective family goals or team goals, but this is a great individual practice as well, even if you have shared goals, is to say, what are the most important goals you have this year? And this is where you're going to want to consider business. You know, if you're a coach and you're listening to this, you probably want to grow your entrepreneurial business. And so you might say to yourself, what is my goal in business? For me, I like a revenue goal. It's an easy way to track success, progress, impact by the number of people that we're serving at the level we're serving them at. And so I've got a clear revenue goal for the year. And then beyond business, I'm going to look at family goals. I want to be more patient. I want to be more loving. I want to be more present as a husband and a father. Then I've got health goals. I want to really like balance. I want to feel balanced in my energy and my nutrition. I want to feel like I've got just a great balance. Really is the best word for me. I just want balance in my health. That's something I learned working with Own It health coaching this last year is finding balance. And so that's super important to me. I also want to grow spiritually. I want to grow in my personal development. I want to keep learning. And so see, these are some of the goals that I have. Once I've written down all the goals that I have, then I want to move into the sixth step, which is tactics. Tactics are more important than goals. Tactics need to be measurable. They need to be the action steps that we're going to take on a daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis to help us achieve these goals. This is essentially the game plan. And we want these to be measurable so that we can know whether or not we're on track, not based on the results, but based on the activity and the actions that we're taking. So as an example, if you wanted to lose 10 pounds, you might have some strategies like focusing on nutrition. You might have strategies like focusing on movement. You might have a strategy around sleep, a strategy around hydration. But inside of those strategies to achieve the goal of losing 10 pounds would be the actual tactics, like exercise 30 minutes a day, or drink a gallon of water each day, or walk 8,000 steps a day, or eat a big salad each day. Like if you had those kinds of tactics written down, then it would be a lot easier for you to achieve your goal because now you've got something focused and measurable that you can achieve each day. And you're not necessarily going to see the results on day 1 or day 5 or day 55 even in some of these goals, depending on the way you want to accomplish it. Especially if it's a sustainable goal, some of these things take time to achieve. But you know that if you just keep showing up and following the plan and hitting the tactics each week, that over time, it's going to equal the fulfillment of your goal. Same thing's true in business. For me, I had a business number, a goal I wanted to achieve. And what I was able to figure out is how many sales I wanted to make each week. Let's say you had a goal of $100,000 business. And let's say you had a $10,000 offer. I'm going to use simple numbers here. That means you need to make 10 sales this next year. So great, you need to make 10 sales to achieve your financial goal. But breaking it down more simply than that, how can we ensure that we're going to hit these 10 sales? Well, we have to have clear, measurable tactics that we're going to take action on again and again and again. And so it might be to say, if you want to make 10 sales, how many sales calls do you need to hold during the year? And everyone's got a different number here, but your closing percentage is probably somewhere between 5% and 50%, depending on how warm the leads are, how high priced the offer is, etc. But let's just say 10%. If we thought that you were going to close 10% of the leads that you talked to into your $10,000 program, then we know that to make 10 sales, you need 100 sales calls for the year. If you're going to work most weeks of the year, that just means that you need to have 2 sales calls each week for 50 weeks of the year to hold 100 sales calls. Okay, now we're simplifying the problem a little bit. We need to hold 2 sales calls a week. Easy problem to solve. The question then becomes, if we're going to hold 2 sales calls a week, how many sales calls do we need to have lined up each week? And you might say, well, some people have to cancel. Some people reschedule. Some people no-show a sales call. And so maybe you decide that you want to line up 3 sales calls a week to give yourself a greater chance of ensuring that you're going to achieve this goal. You're going to actually hold 2 out of the 3. Your numbers may end up being better than this, then great. You accidentally sell a little bit more than you wanted. You accidentally have a little bit more income than you planned on. You accidentally have a little bit more impact than you counted for. That's fine. It's okay to go over. So now you're going to have 3 sales calls lined up a week, 150 for the year lined up. The next question becomes, how many messages do you have to send to people, inviting them to this Zoom call for 3 of them to say yes and line up a call with you? And again, these numbers are going to vary greatly depending on where the lead source is. But let's say you estimated that you needed to send 10 messages a week to line up 3 calls a week. Now you've got a very simple problem to solve. And you could, in a single call, in a single hour session, send your 10 messages. That might be all it is. Send 10 messages 1 time each week. Or maybe you break it down to 2 messages a day, Monday through Friday, each week of the year. Now you no longer have to worry about how many calls are going to be set. You no longer have to worry about how many sales you're going to make. You no longer have to worry about the revenue number. You just need to trust in the plan of sending those 2 messages every day, Monday through Friday. As long as you follow through on that, the averages, the numbers will work themselves out over the course of the year. And so you don't have to have this emotional wave or roller coaster when you have good weeks or bad weeks in sales, because the only thing that makes it a good week is following through on the prospecting attempts. The very simple and clear goal that is measurable that you've created now, a tactic to achieve. The other final step in this is to schedule it. Schedule the tactics into your calendar. And so I was doing this with Kara. I'm going to be having a prospecting goal. I'm going to be focused on holding a certain number of calls in the next year, talking to a certain number of people, inviting them to our programs, and finding the people who are the right fit to move forward. And so for me, I'm going to plan on making 20 prospecting attempts each week this next year. And so I said, okay, we've got our Christian Coaches Academy and our sales school programs. And there's a couple of calls in these programs where I can have an opportunity to prospect right on the call. In sales school, we've got a prospecting party we do every Monday that Gina Locken on our team is running right now. And when she's running that call, I'm going to be there prospecting. That's my plan. I'm going to send 10 messages during that call. And then that's on Monday mornings. And then on Wednesdays, I'm going to send 10 more messages. I've got an hour booked on Wednesday. So I've just got 2 hours booked every single week, recurring event in my calendar. So when it shows up, all I have to do is follow through, and I know I'm going to achieve my goal, along with the other strategies that we have in our business to fulfill on those numbers that we have for the ultimate revenue goal. Broke it all the way down to these 2 hours a week I need to take clear and focused action on, and the rest will take care of itself. Pretty easy. It's a pretty nice plan. There's one more piece of it, which is that I've decided that each sales call I hold this year, I'm going to ask for referrals at the end. I'm going to say, hey, would you mind if I ask you for your help one more time before we wrap up? Who do you know who I should be talking to? Like, do you know 1 or 2 people who are also Christian coaches who you think would benefit from this? And I'm not going to be attached to the result of how many referrals I get. I'm not going to high pressure or push anybody, but I'm just going to lovingly ask if they know 1 or 2 people they could introduce me to who would benefit from working with me or listening to our podcast or being part of this community in one way or another. And by doing that over and over and over throughout the year, I know that's going to produce significant opportunity for the business. A lot of referrals, a lot more easy sales calls to hold, a lot more clients I can impact. So that's really it for me. Those 20 messages a week and asking for referrals at the end of each sales call. That's the focus for my activity on the sales side of things. Now I need to put that in the calendar. I need to schedule it. If you were going to do the 2 prospecting attempts a day, Monday through Friday, you would want to put that in your schedule. Don't just count that you're going to do it. Book 15 minutes, book 30 minutes if you need, even if you're only sending 2 messages and it seems like a poor use of time. There's no better use of time. In fact, there's nothing else that you will ever do in your business that's more important than sending those 2 messages each day. If every coach listening to this simply sent 2 prospecting messages every single day, they would have dramatically better results than they're getting right now. If you're already sending 2 or more a day, send 2 more than you've currently been sending. You'll have a dramatically different outcome at the end of the year. Let's imagine 300 days of the year, you sent out 2 messages. That's 600 attempts to line up calls. How many people are going to book a call from those 600 attempts? A lot. You're going to have a lot of calls. You might hold 100 extra sales calls. What's going to happen in 100 extra sales calls? A lot of sales, a lot of revenue, a lot of impact, a lot of goodness. And so that's breaking down the tactic, and then it's scheduling it in the calendar. If you wanted to do workouts as part of your plan around your health, schedule it in the calendar. If you want to have a weekly date night with your spouse, put the date night in your calendar and set it as a recurring event. Book the babysitter who's going to meet you every single week at your house so that you can get out and have your date night. It needs to be tactical, it needs to be clear, and it needs to be in the calendar, which is the 7th and final step of the planning process. That's what we did today as a family. That's what I did a couple weeks ago as a live workshop with some of our listeners, and what we did with our mastermind this month as well. I just think that this is an important process, and I invite you to take action on it. It's never too late, regardless of when you're listening to this. You can use this as a quarterly planning process. You can use this as a biannual. Is biannual? I always get confused about biannual. Does that mean every other year, or does it mean twice a year? I'm talking every 6 months. Like, you can use this anytime you want. Reflection, looking forward, focusing on who we are, who we want to be, how we want to show up, and then the actions that we want to take to achieve the goals that we want, and getting it in the calendar so it becomes real is valuable any time of the year, whenever you want to do it. I hope this has been helpful for you. God bless you. Merry Christmas if you're listening to this shortly after it's been recorded. If you're listening to this some other time of the year, I just want to remind you the miracle Christmas. Jesus is King. Thank you for coming, Jesus. Thank you for coming and saving us. Pretty amazing stuff. I hope you're doing well. Have an amazing new year if you're listening to this on time. And whenever you're listening to it, have an amazing year. I hope God blesses you and you become more and more of a blessing to others. Talk to y'all soon.